It was one of those heavy, humid mornings that seemed to weigh on everything. Even the air felt tired. In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, Ohio, nothing unusual stirred. Lawnmowers hummed in the distance, sprinklers hissed across front yards, and the neighborhood dogs barked at shadows. Inside a modest two-story home on Cherry Lane, Maya Henderson, 19 years old, was tying her chestnut hair into a neat ponytail. She had that half-awake focus of someone trying to start a normal day. She slipped on her favorite pair of faded jeans, tossed her phone into a small purse, and told her mom she was heading to meet a friend. Her mom called out from the kitchen, "Don't stay out too long, honey." Maya smiled, waved, and walked out into the July heat, unaware it would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Maya wasn't the type to disappear. She was dependable, polite, and careful, the kind of person who double-checked door locks and texted her mother whenever she got home. A sophomore in college, she balanced classes, part-time work, and a quiet social life. She loved true crime documentaries, but never imagined she'd become the subject of one. That afternoon came and went uneventfully. But as the sun began to drop behind the tree line, worry crept into her mother's chest. At first it was subtle, just a glance at the clock, then a text, then another. By 8:30 p.m., her messages had gone unread. By 10 her calls went straight to voicemail. When morning came, panic had settled into every corner of the Henderson house. Maya's parents drove straight to the Maplewood Police Department. But when they explained what happened, the response was routine. Too routine. "She's 19, one officer said. "Probably just needed a break. Happens all the time." But Denise Henderson, Maya's mother, knew better. Maya's wallet, ID, and favorite silver bracelet were still sitting on her dresser. Her textbooks were open on her desk. Nothing suggested she'd planned to leave. As hours turned to days, Maplewood's calm suburban streets began to buzz with quiet unease. Posters went up, friends organized searches. But amid the panic, one man seemed strangely composed. Daniel Reed, Maya's uncle. The same uncle who'd once been the life of every family barbecue. The one who'd always brought her gifts. And now, the last person known to have seen her. At first, the police treated Maya's disappearance like a routine case. Another college student who might have run off, maybe with a boyfriend or after a disagreement at home. But something didn't sit right with Detective Claire Morris, a seasoned officer who'd seen too many families dismissed too quickly. When she walked into the Henderson home that Tuesday morning, she noticed the details others had ignored. Maya's bed was neatly made. Her planner was open, filled with check marks and reminders. A half-finished essay sat on her laptop. This wasn't the room of someone planning to vanish. Claire began tracing the last people Maya had spoken to. Friends, classmates, co-workers, everyone described her the same way, quiet, kind, and careful. But one name kept appearing in texts and calls more often than expected. Daniel Reed, her uncle. He wasn't just a relative. He'd been deeply involved in her life. He helped her with car repairs, picked her up from campus, and even dropped by her dorm sometimes, just to check in. Everyone thought it was harmless, family being family. But the frequency of his visits raised eyebrows. When detectives pulled Maya's phone logs, Daniel's name appeared repeatedly, often late at night. One call lasted nearly 2 hours, just days before she disappeared. Another was made the morning she left home. Claire met Daniel during an early interview. He was polite, calm, and oddly measured. He expressed concern, but showed little genuine emotion. "Maya was like a daughter to me," he said, hands folded, eyes steady. "She's always been a bit private. Maybe she just needed space." But Claire noticed something subtle. When she mentioned the possibility of checking surveillance footage, Daniel's jaw tightened. A flicker, barely visible, but enough to spark instinct. Meanwhile, digital forensics revealed fragments of deleted messages between Maya and an unknown number that traced back to a prepaid phone. Investigators suspected Daniel had used it to contact her secretly. The tone of those texts was concerning, protective at first, then possessive. "She doesn't seem afraid," one detective said. "Not yet," Claire replied, "but fear doesn't always start loud." Behind Daniel's easy charm, something darker was surfacing. a pattern of control that had quietly shaped Maya's life for years. Friends began recalling uncomfortable moments, Daniel showing up uninvited at her dorm, asking who she was spending time with, offering advice that sounded more like warnings. No one had thought much of it before. But now, in the light of her disappearance, every memory felt different. And as investigators dug deeper, they started to see a story not about a girl who ran away, but a man who refused to let go. By early summer, the pieces of Maya's life started revealing a story no one had seen coming. Behind her polite smile and quiet nature, she had been fighting a silent battle, one that had been going on for years. Through recovered text fragments and interviews with her closest friends, detectives began piecing together a disturbing picture. Maya had once adored her uncle. When she was younger, Daniel had been her hero, the funny, reliable family member who always made time for her. But somewhere along the way, that affection twisted into something darker. As Maya got older, Daniel's attention became intense. He'd show up at her college unannounced, send her constant messages, and grow jealous when she spent time with anyone else. It wasn't physical violence, it was control, disguised as concern. When investigators analyzed his messages, the tone shift was impossible to ignore. The early ones were caring. You know you can talk to me about anything. But later, they turned possessive. I don't like how he looks at you. And finally, desperate. You think you can just walk away from me? It was emotional manipulation, hidden under the mask of family love. By spring, Maya had begun pulling away. She'd made new friends, joined a campus design club, and started dating someone her own age, a kind, soft-spoken guy named Eli. Her messages to friends became hopeful again. I'm finally done with all the drama, she wrote in one text. It's time to move on. But Daniel wasn't ready to lose control. His messages became more frequent and more threatening. He called from blocked numbers, left voicemails that sounded calm but cold. One of them ended with a chilling line, "If you won't talk to me, I'll find another way." By June, Maya's fear began to show. She started keeping her curtains closed and stopped answering unknown calls. Her friends noticed she was quieter, more distracted. It's like she was carrying something heavy, one classmate said later. Finally, she made a decision, one she told only her closest friend, Lila. "I'm done being afraid," she said. "I'm going to meet him and end this for good." Lila begged her not to, but Maya insisted. She wanted closure. She wanted peace. On July 14th, she left home in her favorite sneakers, carrying nothing but her phone and her resolve. She told her mom she was meeting a friend before work, but the friend she mentioned wasn't real. The meeting wasn't casual, and the person waiting for her that day wasn't ready to say goodbye. What happened at that meeting would turn a story of control into a nightmare of obsession, one Maplewood would never forget. The morning of July 14th began like any other in Maplewood. The sun hung low over quiet streets, and the air shimmered with that thick midsummer haze. But for Maya Henderson, this was no ordinary day. It was the day she planned to take back her life. Her friend later told investigators that Maya sounded calm, even relieved, that morning. "I just want to end this chapter," she'd said. "He needs to hear that I'm done." By noon, Maya was gone. Detectives later pieced together her route from home to a secluded spot near Lakewood Park, a quiet lakeside area just a few miles outside town. It was a place she and Daniel had visited before, peaceful, private, and far from curious eyes. CCTV footage from a gas station near the park showed Maya's car passing by at 12:27 p.m. Just 2 minutes later, another camera caught a familiar vehicle following behind, a gray pickup registered to Daniel Reed. That was the last confirmed sighting of Maya alive. Around 3 p.m., park visitors recalled seeing a man and a young woman standing near the trees, arguing. The exchange didn't appear violent, just tense. One witness described the man as rigid, focused, like he was holding something in. The woman, they said, looked upset but determined. When the sun dipped lower and families began leaving the park, the two were gone. Hours later, Maya's phone went dark. The signal cut off at exactly 3:47 p.m. pinging one last time from a cell tower near the lake. After that, silence. That evening, Daniel showed up at his sister's house for dinner. Calm, composed. He asked, like everyone else, if Maya had come home yet. He listened as Denise's voice cracked with worry, pretending to share her concern. "She's probably just with friends," he said gently. "Don't panic yet." But beneath that calm exterior, Daniel had already begun constructing a story designed to deflect suspicion before it ever reached him. Over the next 24 hours, he called relatives, friends, and even the police, claiming Maya had been distant, maybe planning to leave town. He even mentioned Eli, subtly planting the idea that she might have run off with her boyfriend. For a moment, it worked. The police leaned toward the easiest explanation, a voluntary disappearance. But when digital investigators began cross-checking phone records, a pattern emerged. Daniel A.'s phone had been active in the same area and at the same time as Maya S.'s final signal. And when they reviewed nearby surveillance, something chilling became clear. The cameras showed 2 people entering the park that day, but only 1 car drove out. For days, Maplewood searched. Volunteers combed the park, flyers fluttered on lampposts, and news anchors repeated the same haunting words: 19-year-old Maya Henderson is still missing. Through it all, Daniel Reed stayed calm, too calm. He attended search briefings, offered theories, even told reporters he believed Maya had run away. "She's a free spirit," he said with a practiced smile. "She just needed space." To anyone watching, he looked like a heartbroken uncle. To detectives, he looked rehearsed. Detective Claire Morris trusted her gut. Something about Daniel's consistency didn't feel natural. When most relatives were panicked, he was collected, as if he already knew the ending. The real break came when a local store owner mentioned something small but crucial: a gray pickup truck parked by the lake the afternoon Maya vanished. The man inside had been sitting alone for nearly an hour before driving off, in a hurry. Investigators pulled footage from that same area, and there it was. The same gray truck Daniel had been driving for years. The timestamp placed him there minutes after Maya's final phone signal. It wasn't proof of a crime, but it was enough to open doors. Forensics swept his vehicle. Inside, they found dirt, leaf fragments, and faint traces of sand, a perfect match for the path near Lakewood Park. When confronted, Daniel's cool exterior began to crack. His story shifted. First, he hadn't seen Maya that day. Then, he had, but only to talk. Then, finally, his voice dropped to a whisper. "She said she was done with me. I just lost control." It wasn't a confession of remorse. It was ownership, the same control that had driven him for years. Months later, the trial drew national attention. Prosecutors painted Daniel not as a monster in the shadows, but as something even more terrifying. A familiar face who believed affection gave him power. The verdict was swift: life imprisonment without parole. In the aftermath, Maya's story sparked conversations about manipulation, emotional abuse, and the silent dangers that hide within families. Her college established a scholarship in her name, dedicated to young women studying psychology and social advocacy. And as for Maplewood, it never forgot. Because Daniel Reed's crime wasn't born out of impulse. It was a slow, deliberate erosion of someone else's freedom. A crime built on control, disguised as care. A mind that believed ownership was love. Analysis. What made this crime chilling wasn't its violence, but its precision. How one man calculated every move to preserve his dominance. It wasn't just cruelty. It was control, meticulously planned, and fatally executed. So, what do you think? Was Daniel Reed's obsession the result of love twisted into control, or pure manipulation from the start? Tell us in the comments below. And if you believe stories like Maya's must be told, subscribe to Illegal Brilliance, where we expose crimes that weren't just cruel, but calculated.